All right, everybody. I think we're going to get started here. We have Bill Wagner, the director of CCAM-TAC, who's going to present today on Section 5310 funding. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat or the Q&A box. And my colleague Kayla and I will be making sure to check that and asking any questions on the slides, and we'll ask any general questions at the end of the session. So over to you, Bill.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Welcome, everyone. This is a webinar on 5310 funding through FTA. First, I'd like to apologize for those who have returned from last week. Some days seem to be our friends, and last week was certainly one of them. So I am, as Lauren said, Bill Wagner. I'm the director of the CCAM-TAC Coordinated Council on Access and Mobility Technical Assistance Center. The mission of CCAM-TAC is to promote and facilitate the coordination of human services transportation, public transit, non-emergency medical transportation, or NEMT, to enhance access to daily necessities like jobs, healthcare, and education. So before we go into the webinar, I'd like to collect a little bit of information from you. If you pull up your phones, you should see a QR code. Just have a few slides. This is for our evaluator. Try to provide what kind of information we need to improve on in our program. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes while you answer the first question. Does your organization currently receive 5310 funds? Well, we're at 50/50 now, so I know at least two people have answered. I'll just give it a couple minutes here while the rest of the scores come in. Looks like we're about 3-1 for those who currently receive 5310, and then some new people on top of that. Looks like we're slowing down here. Give it one more minute. Okay, the next slide, if you can scroll down over this, it should come right up on your phone if you still have it open from the last slide. We're curious as to what states you are calling or in from today. Give this a couple more seconds. Looks like it's slowing down. Arizona seems to be leading the way. Must be it's too hot in Arizona to do anything else but enjoy a webinar. Okay, and the next question. Are you representing a transit agency, an area agency on aging, organization serving individuals with disabilities, mobility management program, or other? And those who are answering other, if you have time and can put it in the chat what organization you are representing or what type of organization you are representing, that would be helpful too. Oh, all of others disappeared now. I'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, today's webinar, we're going to do a brief introduction and overview of the 5310 program in general. We have some key topics for discussion that we'll highlight, and then some frequently asked questions that generally get submitted, and we'll go over them and review them, and then we'll open it up at the very end for questions from us. Excuse me. Program overview. The mission of the 5310 program, and it should be of no surprise, it's right in the name, but it's really to enhance the transportation services or access for older adults and individuals with disabilities. 5310 is a formula funding to states. And if you don't know what that specifically means, it's formula based on your population density. That determines the level of funding that your state will receive in 5310 funding. 5310 funding can come directly from FTA for large regions and large urbans, or it will be distributed through a state DOT based on, for the smaller organizations, rural areas and smaller regions, and you will actually apply for 5310 through your state DOT. The purpose of 5310 funding is to go beyond transit. It's to provide services, whether it's an on-demand or a paratransit service, that goes above and beyond what the current transit system does. There's a question sometimes asked, are vehicles mandated to be ADA compliant? And although it's not mandated if you're purchasing vehicles with 5310 funding that it be ADA compliant, it is mandated if you're providing transportation services that your vehicles be ADA compliant. So, or transit, I'm sorry, not transportation service, transit services. Um, Funding from 5310 can be used for two categories. The first one, and we'll go into this a little more in depth, is for capital. That's to purchase vehicles, maybe purchase software or technology, building a garage for your vehicles, anything like that. And the other one is operational, and that, as it sounds, covers the cost of operating your system. One thing to note, mobility management is classified in 5310 as a capital expense, not an operational expense. So if you were going to operate a call center or a one call, one click center utilizing 5310 funding, it could be funded through the capital component of that. And why that is important, we'll go into a little more detail, but basically it determines how much matching funds are required from the local community before to apply for the 5310 funds. And it's also important to note there is a coordination element. Every community, county, or region applying for 5310 funds has to link to that region's Human Services Coordinated Transportation Plan. It's a requirement of FTA. And if you're applying, a state DOT that's applying for the funds, they also would have to have a state coordinated human services plan that they would link to determine that ability to get these funds. And again, obviously, right in the name, the key eligible populations, any program funded with 5310 funding has to be serving the minority of the minority of the population served has to be the majority of the population served has to be seniors or individuals with disabilities. They will be the primary beneficiaries of 5310 services. Eligible applicants for 5310 funds, a local nonprofit could apply as a subrecipient for 5310 funds. They must serve seniors and individuals with disabilities as the core of their services. State and local governments can apply for 5310 funds directly. Again, eligible when coordinating services, and no qualified nonprofit applicants are available. A lot of times a transit agency will apply for 5310 buses for paratransit services or something when there's no local nonprofit that's able to do that. Public transit operators, as I just mentioned, can also apply for 5310 funds. And again, I can't say this enough. Coordination is a requirement. All funded projects must align with locally developed coordinated public transit human services plans. If you're not aware of your local coordinated human services plan, you can usually find them out from an MPO, state DOT, or a council of governments, planning department, any of those entities will probably be able to get you your county or regional coordinated plan. If there is not one currently in your county, CCAM-TAC has a wonderful resource e-learning course on our website. Will guide you through the process of writing a coordinated human services transportation plan.
Bill, we have some questions about eligible applicants. So one said, can these funds be used for seniors 60 years old? I see 65-year-olds in some of the resources.
Could you repeat that again?
Can these funds be used for seniors 60-year-olds? So uh, I believe she's
So
saying
what is
65
the
plus.
definition of an older adult? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that is correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you want to put it in the Q&A, but I believe she's asking if it's below 65 can be eligible.
Yeah, 55.
And then we have another one. Are churches eligible for funds? What type of services would they need to provide in order to be eligible?
Churches could apply as a nonprofit subrecipient of 5310 funds if they were providing a transportation service for older adults or individuals with disabilities. That could be transportation to healthcare. It could be transportation to social events, health, yeah, healthcare, pharmacies, access to food, employment, any of that, as long as your core population that you serve is falls within that seniors or individuals with disabilities. Any other questions before we go on to the next slide? I think this last point is FTA encourages multiple eligible applicants to apply. They do not want to see one entity providing all of the services for this population in a region.
We have a follow-up question, Bill. What if it is just to church services and back home? Are churches still eligible?
Um, I'm going to say, give us the information and we will follow up with contact email for you to answer that. I'm not 100% positive.
Yeah, thank you.
I believe they need to offer other transportation services, but I'm not 100% sure. So I had mentioned earlier, there's traditional capital projects, and then there's operational funds. Within the traditional capital projects, you'll see that it can be used to purchase buses, vans, wheelchair lifts, technology, anything that would be approved as qualified approved capital expenditure. Um, Mobility management, I mentioned, is a capital expenditure that's been approved by FTA. So that call center. Hold on a second. I think I got the wrong slide. So capital is a 20% local match. In some situations, some areas, some regions, it can be a 15% local match with 85% federal funding used. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory about the equipment and the technology that can be purchased with these funds. The traditional or non-traditional services that you can provide with capital funding, travel training programs, volunteer driver programs, mobility management programs, curb cuts on sidewalks for accessibility. And again, this is a 80-20 match. In some regions, it's 15 or 85 and 15. The operating cap or operating match, if you're applying for operational funds, that could be for fuel costs, repairs, anything like that. And that would be a 50-50 match. So how do you apply for funds? What's the funding cycle? The first step would be FTA decides on the apportionment, how much each state and region is going to get. Again, I mentioned earlier it's formula funding. They will take the population density, the size of the region, and determine what percentage of the overall 5310 allotment goes to your region. Um, then they will put out an RFP or notice of funding opportunity, and you can begin applying for your or assembling your project, your application. You should contact, if you're going to be applying for 5310 funds, your state Department of Transportation, unless you are in a large urban area that is going to apply directly to FTA. Um, Rural areas would look to a local MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the state DOT for your applications and where to apply. After you submit applications, they're reviewed, scored, evaluated, and the award selection is announced. And then you have a 3-year period of availability to use those funds. Any deadlines, anything you need to be aware of will be made in the announcement. And it's hard to pinpoint an exact date where these funds become available. Typically, in my experience, it was always seemed to be announced in late winter, early spring for the applications that when they come out. And again, I can't emphasize enough the coordination factor. If you're not involved or have not been involved with your coordinated plan, now's the time to start planning for next year and researching. If you're not currently, or the need you want to address is not currently identified in the plan, um, now's the time to make an amendment and get that into the plan.
Bill, we have another question in the chat.
Okay.
Could a church use 5310 to improve a non-accessible path to an accessible pathway from a bus stop to the church?
Okay.
Do you want me to read it again?
Yes, please.
Could a church use 5310 to improve a non-accessible path to an accessible pathway from a bus stop to a church?
If the primary usage of that path would be seniors or older adults or individuals with disabilities, yes, I believe that would be an eligible expense.
Awesome. That's all the questions we have for right now.
Okay. So again, I touched on this earlier. There's various, depending on where you're from and the size of the area, the region you're from, determines how you apply for 5310 funds. 200,000 plus population, you would apply directly to FTA. Less than 200,000, you would be going through your state DOTs. Sometimes the MPO or a council of governments will uh, be accepting applications on behalf of a region, whether it is that MPO region or Council of Governments region or another entity, but it's a regional representation. They would serve much in the same capacity as the state DOTs, only on a little bit smaller scale. The benefit of going through the regional MPO or even a state is it's more likely that they will identify with the needs that you're trying to address. The human services coordinated plan, they're going to be more familiar with that than what FTA might be if you're applying it in a large urban area.
We have one question, Bill. For an RFP, you can submit a budget for a 3-year period. Is that correct?
Yes, you would do an annual budget and a full 3-year program budget.
Thank you. That's it.
And again, it's always good to start planning for these opportunities early. Contact your state DOT or your regional MPO and find out when the funding cycle is going to break in that area. Find out what projects they're targeting for, and find out, what you want to do if it's in that regional coordinated plan. If it's as part of or has been identified as a need in that regional coordinated plan, that's going to enhance your ability to apply for these fundings. If not, you need to go back and realign your priorities and your outcomes with your coordinated plans, goals, and outcomes, or see if an amendment can be put in. And when a situation where that would occur is maybe something has changed since that coordinated plan was developed, and now there, maybe healthcare trips are a further distance, and you need a different way of accomplishing that goal for individuals or seniors, individuals with disabilities.
We have another couple of questions, Bill.
Sure.
Somebody asked, just curious, how do you address areas that are very rural and cover huge geographical areas such as 2,300 square miles?
If I had that, only if I had that answer. You have to factor all of that into um, your proposal, and um, the unfortunate truth of the matter is, because of the population density, that allotment for that area might be smaller. So you need to look at, maybe innovative ways to providing that service. Um, I mean, they're still eligible. There's still some money. It just may be more competitive to get the vehicles that you need to provide that service over that large of an area.
And we have a second question. Are large recipients required to do a competitive call for projects?
Um, Actually, no. This, a large region can determine based on history, what organizations would be getting the 5310 funding. But it's always good to inquire. If you haven't received them before, get your name in the hopper so they will look at and consider your application.
That's all the questions we have right now. Thanks, Bill.
So a little bit more on, where do I apply? Do I go to a state DOT or a regional MPO? Kind of the roles and the strategies. Um, the state DOT will offer, the procurement templates, bulk purchasing, technical support. Um, that can be helpful for, like we were just asked the question on this large rural areas. You'll have the benefit of having this purchasing power of the state. You can become more efficient in that capacity. Um, Rural areas are defined as population under 50,000. And in those cases, you have to go through your state DOT. Um, and quite often the funds are really vehicle oriented in those scenarios. A regional MPO, these are situations where the coordinated plan, it's much more, they're more familiar with a coordinated plan. You can dial into this coordinated plan much easier than a statewide plan. And for large areas over 200,000, um, the MPO or Council of Government may be the designated recipient from FTA, and they will put out smaller sub-grants with the 5310 for local providers.
We have another question, Bill.
Okay.
What if you're a subrecipient and your direct will not apply? I think this person's asking if they're a subrecipient from a state and their direct recipient won't apply for 5310 funding at all.
Wow, that's hard to believe. I would say reach out to your regional FTA office and depending on where what state you're located, there's 10 regional offices through FTA. I would reach out to them if uh, if you're having that kind of problem. Can an organization share a vehicle that is purchased with 5310 funding? And where a scenario this might apply is, let's go back to the church that was asking about, maybe they don't have enough usage of a vehicle for full time, but they're going to partner with a local senior housing unit, and they're going to provide transportation. Not only to church, but maybe to provide transportation for older adults to pick up prescriptions, pick up food, and go to the pharmacy. And there's a situation where, as long as the maximum use um, of the vehicle is being targeted towards that core population, and that, it's a situation where a vehicle could be shared um, through the FTA shared vehicle policy. Um, and you can see on the slide, I mentioned two potential organizations that could share. Community action agencies could be another one. Senior housing could be one. And those are the two that I can think of right off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other ones. And then the incidental use policy, does that, if you have a van purchased with 5310 funds, does that mean only individuals with older adults or individuals with disabilities are eligible to ride on that vehicle? No, but the primary usage has to be for that population.
We have another question, Bill.
Okay.
Are subrecipients receiving 5310 funding required to purchase expensive audits each year?
Required to purchase expensive audits? Was that
Yes,
the question? Okay.
yes.
Um, well, I, I guess it's open to interpretation. What is, you will be audited. You will have to have a, financial documentation showing that you're using the funds legitimately. Um, could it be a self-done? No, you need to have an outside auditor review your records. Um, could be a local CPA that could do that for a smaller organization. But yes, you are required to be hold up to an audit.
Okay, thank you.
So what are the core application requirements? Obviously, you need to describe what you're doing, and it has to align with the coordinated human services plan and serving the primary populations of older adults, individuals with services. If you have any partners that you'll be working with, it's critical that they're included in the application, even if there's no financial um, transactions between the two for the services. Anyone that's partnering with you should be listed. And that's also a good way to show match. Um, you've got to have a budget justification requirement, which shows the, legitimate costs that you're putting in your budget are real and not something that are inflated, and you're looking for, paying salaries or something that wouldn't be eligible for the funds. You need to have proof of a nonprofit status to be eligible. You have to be eligible to receive funding through FTA or a federal partner. If for some reason you are banned from receiving federal funds, then you would not be accepted as an applicant. Um, there is a Buy American requirement. Um, that's pretty much stands on its own. And yeah, as I mentioned, you must provide certifications, signed federal certifications confirming that you're compliant with any grant awards that have been finalized. And there'll be
Bill,
the ongoing monitoring.
we have one question. On the ODOT website, in regards to the 5310 funds, it states seniors are defined as any person age 65 or above. When you mentioned 55 years of age, is that for getting funding directly from FTA and not ODOT?
Um, I'm not aware that it was 65. I thought it was 55. I could be wrong on that fact. If your state DOT, and it may just be in Ohio, if your state DOT has it at 65, you must be compliant with that.
Thank you.
Local matching fund requirement, it needs to be non-DOT funds. Um, as the capital match rate 20%, as I said, in some larger regions, it's 15%. Um, can be in kind, it can be braided. Some other federal funds, non-DOT funds could be used. Some, again, if it's a healthcare project, maybe Health and Human Services funds would, you could be used for match. Uh, if you're doing a mobility management project, it's a 20% match. I think I mentioned operating costs is 50/50. And you must show proof that you have that funds before, or when you're applying for it, have access to the funds for the match. And I mentioned this earlier, in-kind contributions, if you're partnering, that's a good way to come up with match. Um, maybe the local church, um, again, we'll go back to the example brought up earlier. Maybe the local church is serving or doing a service. Um, and by service, I mean not just a church service, but putting in work to maintain that accessible trail. Um, that could be counted as in-kind donation. And it's always good when you're, before you start writing your application, that you've identified local partnerships for matching funds when you go to write the application in.
Bill, we've had in the chat someone say, per FT, I believe it is 65 years old for a senior. And somebody said to remind people this is a state managed program and agencies should look as their state's SMP for any clarifications.
Yes.
That's all the questions we have for right now.
Okay. So again, the coordinated plan, it's a statutory requirement. All 5310 projects must originate from an adopted coordinated plan. That coordinated plan could be a county plan, a regional plan, or in some cases, a state plan. But without that plan, your your project will not get funded if it's not linked to a plan. The best, and I mentioned this earlier, we have the e-learning course, but the best um, most likely plans or projects to be funded are those that are developed from a locally developed regional plan that really understand the needs, the assets or resources in the area and how it can be supplemented. Um, Project eligibility, if it's not referenced in a coordinated plan, it will be ineligible for 5310 funding. That's pretty cut and dry. If you're not in there, now's the time to get involved with your coordinated plan, get an amendment to the plan if something has changed and there is a new need that's been being demonstrated. So the coordinated planning process, pretty much spelled out here. identifying the need, inventory of your services, your resources in the area, where are the gaps, what kind of gaps exist and how you're going to address those gaps, and then they need to be prioritized with a plan. Um, you know, a single entity should not be writing a human services coordinated plan. It needs to be a community or regional effort. And it's also advised to include the population, representation from the populations that you're serving. All that is clearly laid out in our course. As I mentioned, stakeholders, who needs to be involved? Your human service providers, representation from their transportation providers should be represented in your human services coordinated plan. Um, Opportunities for public comment need to be announced and accepted. Um, Engaging with the older adults and individuals with disabilities to get their input on this. And then you need evidence that this engagement has taken place, and that needs to be represented in your application. Reporting requirements. The reporting requirements here are if you're receiving direct funding from FTA, you would need to check with your state DOT if you're going through the state. Um, they would be responsible, I believe, for entering the information into trams and MPRs, FPRs, but you will have quarterly reports to your state DOT.
We have a question in the chat. Can volunteer drivers be utilized as an in-kind match and a partnership?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, other reporting that needs to get done on the 5310, the NTD annual reporting, basically tracking what transportation services, the distance, ridership, and that. Um, Assessment inventory, any vehicles reported are funded with F5310 funding. You need to report usage on that into NTD. Safety data, accidents, incidents, safety performance metrics also would be required to be reported. Um, Title VI program update every 3 years needs to be reported, and a Title VI complaint procedures needs to be present. How can CCAM-TAC help you beyond this webinar is, again, we do provide webinars like this. We have the e-learning course. We have some coordinated plan guidance. We can do on-site technical assistance regarding coordinated plans. And we will be having application assistant or toolkits with aids to provide. We're always available by email for help at info dot, no, inf, yeah, Lauren, tell them our email info address.
Of
Info
course.
at,
Yeah,
in-
info at ccam-tac.org. So it's info at ccamtac.org. Our website is just ccamtac.org. Make sure you include the dash, and you'll find our information there as well as our technical assistance in the email.
okay. Also some more CCAM resources, um, information on the 5310 application, writing a plan, webinars, um, maintenance and life cycles. Vehicles purchased with 5310 have a useful life of 4 to 5 years, or 100 to 150,000 miles, whichever milestone is reached first. If you're applying for capital funds, and you're, you know, should plan on a vehicle falling into one of those two categories, especially if you're planning on 5310 funds to replace existing vehicles. Um, Vehicles retired early before that useful life, you could have to be held eligible or responsible, I should say, for reimbursement to FTA for the difference between um, the useful life age and when you're retiring that vehicle. Um, you can sell, transfer, dispose of vehicles per FTA rules after the vehicle has met its useful age life, that 4 to 5 years or 150,000 miles.
Couple questions.
Yep.
Are there other funding options for vehicles other than 5310?
Yes. Um, there's, within FTA, there's, depending on if you're a rural or urban area, there's 5307 or there's 5311 funds. Um, the, the difference is they're not specifically targeted to older adults and individuals with disabilities. There are other sources of funding that are non-FTA. Um, you can look at CCAM-TAC offers a pilot grant. One way to ease into this if you're starting to a project that may be eligible for 5310 is apply for one of our pilot grants and get a year under your belt showing the value of that, the impact, the outcomes, showing that demonstrating that when you apply for 5310 funds that you have done it in a pilot project. Um, Other federal entities sometimes provide funding for vehicles, Health and Human Services, USDA, all of them. A part of the CCAM, the Coordinated Council on Access and Mobility, not the Technical Assistance Center. There's 130 some federal programs that are funding transportation in one way or another. I had mentioned when you're looking at match to look at other federal funds that you might be affiliated with, collaborating with, that could um, allow you to leverage additional 5310 funds by having their other funding source braiding funding with you with that. Most recently, there's rural health transformation funds. For rural areas, that's another potential source to purchase vehicles. But in many of those that I just mentioned, you're not going to find a situation where they're going to release an RFP saying funding dedicated to purchasing a van or a bus. It's going to have a different objective, a different outcome, and you have to prove why a vehicle can meet that or why and how a vehicle can meet that outcome specific to that funding source's goals. Um, FTA is, you know, as long as it aligns with a coordinated plan, you know, they have funding available to buy vehicles that a lot of agencies would or other programs may struggle um, to see the connection.
Thank you. And I think a good amount of people were asking about the slides. Would these be on our website or would this be via email? Could we share these slides?
These slides, this webinar will be recorded on our website. The slides will be available on the website with a recording. That should be up, um, I'm going to say by the end of the week.
Yes, it'll be up by the end of the week.
So wrapping up, again, I think I've made it plenty clear. Coordination, the Human Services Coordinated Plan is essential. You have to be compliant with the federal compliance. That includes Title VI, the ADA, Buy America, all of that. You have to keep your reporting timely. Reports are due when they are due, and they need to be accurate. Um, Your eligibility, I will find out for sure the question about the church regarding just providing transportation for church activities. And then the match requirements I have mentioned in here, they are um, 80-20 in most cases for capital projects. Some larger areas are 80 or 85-15, meaning you have to have 15% as a local match. And then your operating capital is 50% matched. So for every dollar you are applying for funding through FTA to operate your program, you have to have a dollar of local funding. That can be generated through um, revenue from the trips. It can be a local contribution. It could be a partner donating the funds, a local foundation, or any of that. So we'll wrap up. I don't know, is there any questions, any more questions
We
on
have
this?
another question.
Okay.
It's all great to get a vehicle, but maintaining it, dispatch, and a driver are a real part of the costs for a nonprofit. Does anyone pay for operational expenses, fuel, etc.?
You can apply for 5310 funds, operational funds that will cover all of what you just discussed. Um, it's helpful if you have a FTA funded vehicle to apply for FTA funded operational expenses, but it's not necessary. Um, I think if as long as it meets the requirements, you can submit for 5310 funds for operational.
Awesome. And if anybody else has any other questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box or the chat, and we will make sure that they get asked.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And if there's any questions you think of afterwards, feel free to email us and we'll get back with an answer.
Yeah. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at info@ccamtac.org. We're here to answer your questions. If you have any questions in these last couple minutes, please again feel free to put them in the Q&A box or the chat. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. We've reached the end of our webinar. Have a great rest of your Monday. The slides will be made available on our website, as will a recording by the end of this week. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.